And Mr. Dartmouth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, I've got to express my disappointment that there's the very low turnout of the attendance of the EPP to hear Mr. Jadot's eloquence on this matter. And I would also point out that there's no representative of the ECR at all. I mean, we in my party are always getting flack for not turning up, and this is a very large number of people not turning up. Oh, there is one. Oh, there is one. There he is. Of course, Vice Chairman come in a completely different category. So, of course, as they sit. About 3 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago, I wrote the equivalent opinion on the European Investment Bank. And I'm afraid that not much of my opinion survived the mangling it got in this committee, but these things happen. There's a very, very important point here, which is that actually what I found then is that the European Investment Bank is actually run, given the way that European institutions are normally run, not too badly on relatively sound commercial principles. And the relatively sound commercial principles in banking are very, very simple. You lend money and you check out that the person that you lend money to has got the ability to pay it back. If they can pay it back, you make money, and if they can't pay it back, e.g. Greece, you're going to lose money. And that is essentially what happens. Now, if you dilute that, and you introduce a whole lot of political criteria and a whole lot of and a very large political agenda, what is going to happen is that the principles of lending are going to be diluted to a greater or lesser degree, and the institution stops being run on commercial grounds, and the institution will start to lose money. Now, I'll say first of all what I agree with in Mr. Jadot's report. I very much applaud the reference to small and medium-sized enterprises. However, the rest of it is really very worrying indeed. And I'm going to concentrate on 2 points here. And I should be pretty brief, as I always am, as the Chairman knows. First of all, we have here calls on the Commission to establish in cooperation with the EEAS, which for the uninitiated is the External Action Service, which in turn is the foreign policy arm of the EU, a framework for annual reporting on its operations with the general principles guiding Union external action. So what's being proposed here by Mr. Jadot, very, very adroitly, is that the European Investment Bank should be an instrument of foreign policy. That is what is being proposed. Well, fair enough. Fair enough. Now, I'm neither going to agree nor disagree with it, although I think it's entirely wrong. But I just try to draw it to the attention of other members of the committee, not least in the EPP and the ECR, although there's not very many of them to hear it, by the way, that this is what is being proposed, and it should be considered very, very, and I think it should be rejected. And then the second point I'm going to make, that only took me 1 minute, so that'll surprise you. The second point I want to make, which has an urgent topical, which is of urgent topical concern to the UK and to constituents in the UK, is it says here, looks forward to the update of the EIB climate strategy in lending to non-renewable energy projects. Well, this in turn carries with it a financial penalty, and before this sort of thing is advocated, we should know what the financial penalties are. Now, I've always said, and I've said it before, that I have tremendous admiration for the Green Party, not because of what they say, because what they stand for is to take the European economy and the UK economy back to the Stone Age. But what I do have tremendous admiration for is their skill as politicians. And the fact of the matter is, well may you giggle, MS Kirton-Darling. I'm going to come to a very serious point which concerns you in just a moment. And the consequence of it is that in the EU, we have very, very high energy costs. And they're even higher in the UK because of the currency and so on. And that has effects. It has direct effects on manufacturing industry. And we now have a crisis in the UK, particularly in the area which Ms. Kirton-Darling represents. And I'm sorry that you find it so amusing, that the consequence of high energy costs has resulted in the closure of steel mills and the destruction of the UK steel industry. So when we listen to all this green stuff, it all sounds very, very well. But it does have consequences. It has direct consequences for the people that we represent. If this goes on, very shortly there will be no UK steel industry and probably no EU steel industry either. So I basically say that the green aspects of this opinion should be rejected in their entirety.
Thanks a lot.